Hello everyone, I'm Heather. If you have watched my videos for some time, especially my vlogs when we're traveling, you may have noticed that I almost never wear any jewelry when I'm traveling. The truth of the matter is, I almost never wear jewelry at all. I'm not wearing any jewelry right now. I have no necklaces, no rings, no bracelets, no earrings. And in today's video, I'm going to talk to you about why I don't wear any jewelry most of the time, but especially when I'm traveling, and why you might want to consider not wearing it either, or at least wearing less. Now, in some of my cruising vlogs, especially when we're dressed up in the evening for dinner, you may notice that I do usually wear earrings. So that's about the only jewelry I wear anymore is earrings. If I'm ever going to some kind of event where I have to dress up, I will put some earrings on. I honestly cannot remember the last time I wore a necklace, a bracelet, a wristwatch, or rings. When I was married, I did obviously have a wedding ring. I had a very beautiful, actually, set of an engagement ring, a tension-mounted single diamond engagement ring, and a wedding ring. They were welded together. My husband had already also given me an eternity ring, gold band with diamonds all the way around. I sold both of those when I got divorced. So I haven't worn any rings in over a decade. When I was younger, I did wear more jewelry. When I was in my teens, 20s, even early 30s, I kept up with the times in my clothing and my accessories. I wore necklaces, I wore earrings, I wore bracelets. I always wore a watch, and that is something that I definitely do miss, is wearing a wristwatch. I still, to this day, years later, after having to stop wearing a wristwatch, which I'll explain why in a second, still go like this all the time, expecting to be able to check the time on my watch. I have considered buying another watch and giving it another try. I may still do that. One thing I actually really appreciate is when places have clocks on the walls. Cruise ships often will have clocks, so you know what ship time is. But the places that don't have clocks really do bother me. One place that's so weird that doesn't really usually have any clocks is airports. There's not really any clocks anywhere oftentimes in the airport. Many hotel rooms do not have any kind of clock in them anymore. Hilton, thankfully, still has alarm clocks, but sometimes they're wrong when you get in there and you have to reset them and stuff. People have gotten so much in the habit of looking at the time on their phone, which is fine, but first of all, you have to go through the effort of taking your phone out and looking at it, if it's like put away in your purse or your pocket or something. And there are times when that time on your phone could be wrong, which we have run into a few times on cruise ships. In addition to those rings that I mentioned, I did have one other pretty expensive piece of jewelry. For my 30th birthday, my then husband, or actually we weren't married yet, my then fiance, gave me a real pearl necklace. I do still have that necklace. I keep it in my safe deposit box at the bank. I wore that when I got married with my wedding dress. And then I also took it with us on our honeymoon, which was a cruise. You can hear about that up here. Here's why I personally no longer wear any jewelry at all, including a watch, which I miss. I have two medical conditions that have very long, weird names that are distinct from each other, but also somewhat interrelated. The first condition I have is something called dermatographism, which literally translates to skin writing. So what that involves is if anything touches my skin anywhere on my body, if like what my dermatologist actually did was she took a pen without the, closed, without the ink sticking out, and she actually wrote with the, closed pen on my back. And my skin flares up and freaks out and reacts very violently. She wasn't pressing very hard or anything. And the lines where she writes make little marks on my skin and stay there for hours. So anything that touches my skin like that, if I get scratched or rubbed or anything like that, It's like my skin is being written on with a hyperactive immune response. So my skin is very sensitive, and this dermatographism affects my ability to wear anything that touches me. So I can't really wear rings or a watch anymore, because anything like that that rubs my skin or touches my skin causes me to have that really dramatic skin reaction. Along with that, the second condition that I have is called chronic spontaneous idiopathic urticaria. Okay? That is a long, fancy, weird bunch of words that basically means I have chronic hives and they don't know why. And they can happen at any time without a reason. It sucks. Okay? The dermatographism, I think I've probably had somewhat, to an extent, most of my life, but just it got worse. The chronic hives, which chronic means it's long term. It happens over years and years and years. Spontaneous means it just comes on suddenly. Idiopathic means they can't find a reason. So they cannot find a cause of the hives. There's no medical, I'm not allergic to anything. I mean, I am allergic to some things, but that's not what's causing the hives. You know, they can't really find, it's not diet. You know, they can't find a real reason what causes them. And then urticaria is hives. So I have chronic hives that spontaneously appear for no reason. However, this started right after we came back from our cruise on Mariner of the Seas in August of 2018. I remember it very distinctly. It started all of a sudden, and then it never went away. I do manage it fairly well by taking half a tablet of Zyrtec every day. That keeps it pretty much under control. I do not get the severe hives that I used to get. Like, I would get whole bunches of them all together, like on my torso and stuff, and they were terrible. And they would get huge. They'd be really alarming. And thankfully, I even had a really bad case of them one time when I was at my dermatologist's office, so she was able to see them. And they're terribly, terribly itchy. They could take days to go away. There does seem to be some relationship between the dermatographism and the chronic hives. So if something touches me wrong or something, that can cause hives to flare up. The only other two things I've been able to determine seem to somewhat cause the hives to be a problem is heat, like if I get too hot. That's especially true for this part of my body, for my torso. The second thing that seems to set it off sometimes is stress. So a hot, stressful situation is definitely bad for me. Because of those two medical conditions, I literally can no longer tolerate to wear most jewelry or even anything very tight or anything like that. So that's the main reason that I personally do not wear jewelry all the time, and including when I travel. I do still like to wear earrings, which don't bother me too much, although sometimes I can even get little tiny hives on my earlobes, if you believe it, just because it makes for a nice polished look and it looks nice in pictures and things like that. Even if I didn't have these conditions that cause me to opt out of wearing jewelry, there's some really good reasons why you might want to consider wearing less jewelry or not wearing any jewelry at all when you're traveling. Number one is, if you don't have it with you, you can't lose it. Okay? One instance that I remember very vividly, very shortly after I got married, I worked in a hospital, and one of my duties was sterilizing some medical equipment from the patients who had sleep studies the night before. I had to go down to a completely different floor of the hospital and go to the respiratory lab and sterilize this equipment and stuff. And I didn't want anything to happen to my wedding ring, and it was too big. I had a pretty big ring to wear under latex gloves. So I took my ring off and set it by the sink when I was doing this and left it there. And I think I'd been married like a week and I didn't even realize, I wasn't so used to the ring. I hadn't been married long enough that I missed it when I got back up to my desk. And it was only a long time later, it was the same day, that somebody down in that department found my ring, figured out who it belonged to, and called me and said, hey, we've got your ring down here. And I freaked. That's an example of like in a work environment, could lose a piece of jewelry. But if you're traveling, if you're away from home, you're in an unfamiliar environment, your routine is different than it would be when you're at home. You might be thinking about a lot more things, trying to get your bearings in new places and stuff like that. There's a lot of reasons you could just not be thinking the same way and not remember where you put something or where did you take it off or whatever. And it would be easy to lose a piece of jewelry. Second thing closely related, if you're not wearing jewelry, especially expensive or fancy, expensive looking jewelry, it's not going to get stolen. Theft of jewelry is a problem when you travel, not only like on the street in a big city, in a large foreign city where pickpocketing and theft is, street theft is common, but also in some cruise ports, there have been even groups of tourists who have been robbed at gunpoint and, things like their jewelry would have gotten taken. So if you're not wearing expensive looking jewelry, nobody's going to see any expensive looking jewelry and they're not going to think, oh, that's something I want to steal. One thing I will say about this, if you do want to take nice or expensive jewelry with you on a trip, make sure you don't leave it unattended anywhere. And in your hotel room or in your cruise ship stateroom, make sure you put it in the safe. When I took my pearls with me on my honeymoon, I think I wore them a couple times, but when they weren't around my neck, they went right back in their case and they immediately went in the safe. I knew that they were locked up and I didn't have to worry about them being lying out or anybody trying to steal them or anything like that because they were locked up. And if you don't feel comfortable with leaving jewelry, if it's something really expensive or, it's an heirloom piece or something like that, in your hotel room or stateroom safe, you could also leave it with the purser on a cruise ship. They would have a more secure safe or, management at a hotel. Just make sure if it's something very valuable, you want to make sure that it's protected if you're taking it with you when you travel. And then along with all of that, the other reason I choose not to wear jewelry or really anything that would make me for any reason look really wealthy. I'm not really wealthy, but there are times when I might be in a situation where wealthy people might be, where the people that are there, the environment would be someplace that, is a more upscale location or something like that. But even not that, even if you're using public transportation or you're walking down the street or anything when you're traveling, one of the top rules for personal safety when you're traveling, or even, just going about your own town where you live, is do not draw attention to yourself. You do not want to do anything, be wearing anything, or behave in any way that would draw attention to you. The 1986 movie Heartburn, starring Jack Nicholson and Meryl Streep. Really good movie. Check it out if you haven't seen it. There's a scene in that movie where Meryl Streep's character, is on the subway in New York City, and she's got her wedding ring on, and a guy comes onto the subway car and starts robbing everybody. Okay, I think he has a gun or a knife or something. And she turns her ring around so that the diamond is facing in an effort to hide it a little bit so that she's not drawing attention to herself that she's wearing an expensive piece of jewelry. It doesn't work and the guy gets the ring. That's just an example. Another time that I can think of as far as like drawing attention to myself was back before we had nice compact cell phones to film with. I've been video logging our travels and our family's time together for many, many years, since the 90s. And I used to have one of the big video cameras that you had to hold, that had actual tapes in them and stuff. And I would take that with us when we traveled. And I can remember an instance where I was filming at Coit Tower on Telegraph Hill in San Francisco. And then I put the video camera in the bottom of my son Andrew's stroller. And I was pushing him in the stroller. Now, as long as I was pushing the stroller and the video camera was there, and I think I tucked it under, you know, along with the diaper bag and stuff. But some very savvy criminals working as a team, somebody started talking to me and distracted me away from the stroller, acting like another tourist, chit-chatting with me. And their partner came along and went to make a move to steal my video camera. And thankfully, I think it was my uncle, saw them and made a fuss and like yelled or something like, hey, you know, or ran over there and stopped them. And at the time I felt like really dumb, like, oh, I shouldn't have taken my eye off of that. But that was an example of where, you know, be aware of your surroundings, first of all, but where having that big expensive video camera was drawing attention to me as a potential target for thieves. So that's the kind of thing I mean with jewelry. If you get off a cruise ship in a port that, you know, there's a lot of petty crime or even violent crime, or you're walking around a city in Europe or the United States even, and you have a lot of flashy, expensive looking jewelry on, you can be making yourself a target. And that's not something you want to do when you're traveling. You have enough to worry about with safety when you're traveling that you don't need to add another factor like that into it. So I really recommend that you don't wear jewelry, or at least keep it very minimal when you're traveling. I just think it's simpler, safer, and wiser to keep jewelry to a minimum when you're traveling. Then you don't have to worry about losing it. You don't have to worry about it getting stolen. You don't have to worry about drawing attention to yourself. Just a little bit more on that drawing attention to yourself. One thing that my dad used to do a lot when we traveled, he tends to be a cash person. He's been very slow to like make the transition from using cash for everything to using cards and stuff like that. And I don't think he'll ever get to the point where he's using, you know, touchless or use your phone to pay or anything like that. But I can remember several times when we'd be like getting out of a taxi in a big city or walking down the street, and he would have just hundreds and hundreds of dollars in cash that he'd be like very slowly putting back in his wallet because he just paid for something, you know, paid the taxi driver or whatever. And I'm like, Dad, put that away. I mean, I can remember even as a teenager being really alarmed by that. I'm like, Dad, you're drawing attention to us. Put the cash away, put your wallet away. You know, so things like that, anything like that that's going to draw attention to you. I talk about this a little bit where there was a time I was with my mom in Paris on the metro. I think this was after the first thing happened to her. I talk about both of them in this video. Go check it out. She almost got, you couldn't even call it pickpocketed. She had one of those around the neck pocket things under her shirt. And so it was like about here on her. It was under her clothing. And a pickpocket, a girl, actually stuck her hand up under the bottom of my mom's shirt. And my mom felt her hand under there and actually slapped it because she couldn't think the words fast enough in French to tell her stop or don't or whatever. And the girl, you know, quick got off the metro, and my mom didn't lose anything. But my mom was like hyper vigilant after that. So in a subsequent ride on the metro, I still had my passport in my hand, and something funny happened with that. I mean, I should have put that away immediately. That was my own mistake. I think we were hurrying to catch the train, and I didn't have a chance to, you know, tuck my passport away. But check out that video because that was kind of a funny story. The exception to not wanting to draw attention to yourself would be if someone is, I guess, attempting or is actually committing a crime against you. So you fear for your safety, you are in trouble. You are getting mugged, you're getting well, if you're getting mugged, it's really best to just cooperate and just give them what they want. But if you're, you know, they're trying to pull you into a car, they're physically attacking you, trying to kidnap a child, something like that, then you do want to draw attention to yourself. If you are in imminent danger, the best thing you can do is draw as much attention to yourself as possible. Screaming, yelling, fighting like crazy, running away, honking your horn, setting off a personal alarm if you have one, all the things that, you know, yelling fire because that will get people's attention more than help will, all those kinds of things. You do want to draw attention to yourself in a situation like that, whether you're traveling or just in your regular daily life, because that will hopefully scare the perpetrator off. So that's just one little added thing about that. Now, if somebody's literally robbing you at gunpoint and they're trying to take your jewelry is not worth your life. Do not try to fight for your jewelry. Hopefully it's insured. It's literally just stuff. It might have incredible sentimental value. I totally understand that, but it is still just gold or silver and gems. It's not worth losing your life over. Don't be so concerned with protecting your jewelry, you fail to protect yourself. I hope that you found this video interesting and helpful. If you did, please be sure to give me a thumbs up down below. And if you're interested in travel content like this, make sure that you're subscribed to my channel and click the notification bell so you get an update every time I put out a new video. Have a great day, everyone, and safe travels.